My name is Steve Angle. I'm the Chancellor of the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to this lecture. I'm honored to introduce esteemed broadcast journalist Dan Lothian. We're fortunate to have him here as a visiting journalist in residence for the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga's Department of Communications to give us what will be the first of many guest lectures over the next 2 years. And congratulations to our communications faculty, Chair Betsy Alderman, head of the department. This is a great opportunity for our students to see what you do with a career in communications. Dan is the owner of Dan Lothian Media, a media content and investment company, contributing correspondent to PBS's Religion and Ethics News Weekly, and a partner in Velmo Ventures Media. Most of you recognize Dan from his years as CNN's White House correspondent, where from 2008 to 2013 he reported on national and international affairs and traveled with President Obama to more than 30 countries. Before that, he served as CNN's Boston bureau chief, where in addition to his duties as a reporter, he coordinated all of the news coverage for the greater Boston area. So throughout his career in journalism, Mr. Lothian has covered a wide variety of national and international topics, including the 2004, 2008, and 2012 presidential races, contributed to CNN's award-winning coverage of Hurricane Katrina. He received 2 national Emmy nominations and was a key member of CNN's Peabody award-winning political team. In terms of background education, he received his BA in broadcasting from Tennessee Temple University and a master's degree in journalism and public affairs from American University. While his broadcast journalism career has taken him across the country and around the world, his first job as a general assignment reporter was here in Chattanooga at WDEF TV. So it's a real pleasure to welcome Dan Lothian back to Chattanooga for the first of a series of guest lectures.
Thank you very much for that warm welcome. It's always a great honor to meet with students and kind of share some of my experiences and the journey that I've been on and continue to be on. And thank you as well to the general public that was invited to come here this morning. Thank you, Chancellor Angle, and thank you, Dr. Alderman, for extending such a warm welcome to the UTC campus. I know all of you aren't aware of this, but Dr. Alderman wanted to be a little creative in promoting my arrival here on campus, and she put together this, let's see, a life-size likeness of Dan Lothian. Yeah, you're chuckling, right? You know what happened. I was looking forward to seeing this thing. I've never seen myself in cardboard before. My son asked me to take a picture next to this cardboard Dan Lothian. There's only one problem. I got an email that said, "You've been stolen." I quickly opened it because you've been stolen. What happened? Somebody took me. And sure enough, someone had taken my cardboard cutout, and it's missing. There's a $50 reward if you can bring it back. I immediately thought maybe it was the Secret Service that took it away. They wanted to question me about my speech today. We know all the problems the Secret Service has been having. Don't worry, it's the cardboard Dan Lothian. They won't get anything. So, a friend of mine is a professor at Babson University, just right outside Boston, and we were just talking about this, this program that I was going to be coming here and meeting with students and others over the next couple of years. I told him about this speech. I told him that I would be speaking for about an hour, and he said, Dan, don't pull a Bill Clinton. For those of you who can remember back to 1988 when President Bill Clinton was doing that Democratic National Convention speech, and it went on and on and on and on. and everyone applauded at the end because they were glad it was over with. I promise not to do that to you this morning. We have some video clips. This one right here. Viewer discretion is advised, by the way, with this video, and I'll tell you more about. That's my tease for this video here. But we have some video clips. I have some pictures. I have some interesting stories that have occurred in my career. And I'll also talk about the Obama administration and the issue of access and transparency. That's something that's been in the headlines quite a bit lately, about how much access reporters are getting, how much information they're getting access to, and so I'll be touching on that as well. And hopefully we can come through this and you'll say, wow, that was only like 10 minutes, and you'll enjoy it. Several months ago, I mentioned to some former colleagues that I was going to be lecturing at UTC, an opportunity to share some of my experiences with future journalists and others in the communication field. They seemed confused. Why would you travel all the way to Chattanooga from Boston, where basically there are more colleges than 7-Elevens? I mean, there's Harvard, MIT, so forth. And what they didn't understand is that this city, in so many ways, helped shape who I am today. I met my wife here in Chattanooga. I met my best friends here in Chattanooga. Mark and Jim attended Tennessee Temple with me, and boy, we used to try to make a name for ourselves on radio stations across town, WMOC, WZRA, WDYN, and WGOW. Those were the days. I bought my first house in Chattanooga, which it wasn't a good investment because I sold it too soon. And then I got my start, as you heard, in television right here in Chattanooga. The year was 1988. And I was here to launch my career, to launch this journey that I would be going on. So to answer the question posed by my confused former colleagues, coming to this city feels like returning home. There are many choices that you can make, many big universities that you can go to. Typically, someone who works inside the Beltway goes and knocks on the door of Harvard. But there are a lot of great communication programs across the country that also can be highlighted. And this is one of those programs, and I'm so thankful to be part of this for the next 2 years. So back in 1988, on the job hunt, I flew into Chattanooga. One of the local stations here had an opening for a reporter. I went over there and actually got kind of a lukewarm welcome. So I decided to go to Channel 12. Why? Because I could. I knocked on the door, and there was an assignment editor there who welcomed me in. When I told him that I was looking for a job, he said, well, we don't have any openings, but I'll hand your resume tape, to the news director. That happened over a weekend, and I visited with some of my friends here, but overall, I was frustrated as what I thought was a fruitless trip. I came here to get a job, and I was leaving without one. So I flew back to Washington, D.C., where I was living at the time. And then it happened. On Monday morning, the little answering machine that I had purchased in order to get that critical call from a news director, the light was blinking. There was one message. He told me he had seen my tape that was sitting on his desk. Did I want the job? My first question was, what job? Because I knew there wasn't a reporter opening. He said, there's a reporter. I said, sure, I'll take it. I didn't even ask how much I would get paid. I would learn later to appreciate money a little bit more. But first, I needed to learn how to report and write, how to sniff out a good story and convince skeptical eyewitnesses to talk. And so, This is how it all began, with a story at Erlanger Medical Center. They had just gotten their new helicopter, and Dan Lothian, fresh out of grad school, was about to tell the public in his own way what that story was about. Now, again, viewer discretion is advised here. Please do not laugh at the stand-up at the end of this piece.
Flying high in the cloudy skies, Life Force made its way to Erlanger Hospital amidst the applause of onlookers. The long-awaited arrival was a welcome sight to all. It was a moment filled with meaning.
This helicopter, Life Force, means many things to all of us, but most importantly, it means life-saving transportation to people in need.
Although such a service has been available in other parts of Tennessee, this is the first unit in Chattanooga and the tri-state region. Life Force can transport 2 patients at a time and carry a crew of 3, a flight nurse, a certified paramedic, and a pilot. This well-equipped chopper has been dubbed the Cadillac of helicopters because it's the best that money can buy.
There's only 2 others in the United States that's like this. This is the top in the whole United States that there is. Out of all the aircraft that could be selected and or configured, this one would be right in the top.
Life Force will primarily be responding to on-the-scene trauma emergencies and transporting serious patients between hospitals. Spanning a 150-mile radius, it will serve eastern Tennessee, northern Georgia, and northeastern Alabama. Officials at Erlanger are excited about the new Life Force program. They anticipate approximately 200 patients will be transported in a year. With a well-qualified crew and the best helicopter, they say healthcare in the tri-state region will be dramatically improved. Dan Lothian at Erlanger for News Center 12.
So, first of all, I don't know, I said helicopter. I'm not sure how I pronounce helicopter or something. That was kind of weird. Did you also see me lick my lips? This is a recorded thing, and I could have used other. Anyway, I was just starting out, and you see how it all began. And so that's my first ever piece done on television. No one has seen it in over 25 years, but I found it in a big bag, and I thought I would share it with you. By the way, that tie I had on, it was my lucky tie. I kept that until a few years ago, and somehow I got rid of it. But thousands of stories later, and a bit wiser and much older, I found myself in 2008 at the north gate of the White House. It was the final weeks of the Bush administration, and President Obama had just won a historic election. Many Americans had been frustrated with the bad economy. They were tired of war. President Obama rode a wave of hope and change. It was an amazing time. I remember I had visited CNN's headquarters in Atlanta, and I was flying back home, and I was in the Atlanta airport. There were 2 older women sitting behind me. They didn't realize I was sitting where I was, and they were having this discussion about politics, and the one lady said to the other, "You know, I've never voted for a black man before, but I think I like this guy." And that's when I realized that something unusual was happening across the country. And so that was the wave that the president was riding. But his honeymoon period would fade quickly. The financial crisis deepened. Companies were closing their doors. Americans were losing their jobs. And 401ks were cut in half. That great dream home was now underwater, and the foreclosure Grim Reaper was circling more and more communities. Some people who had voted for President Obama suddenly had buyer's remorse. So that was the climate as I began my 5-year stint covering the White House and the Obama administration. So back at the North Gate, I hit the intercom button and spoke to Secret Service Officer Dave. He was seated behind thick bulletproof glass. He was an unpleasant sort of guy who rarely smiled, unless he was hitting you up to support a favorite charity or talking about sports. I'm Dan Lothian with CNN, I said. Stand by, he replied. I was still 6 months away from getting my hard pass, and for those of you who aren't familiar with what the hard pass is, it's kind of the holy grail of credentials. It takes 6 months for them to check your background, to interview your friends, to see if you've ever done anything crazy in your life. By the way, think about this when you're out running around on Friday nights. It may come back to haunt you. So I didn't have my hard pass yet. It was my first day, so I had to wait and wait and wait before I was buzzed in. It took several more minutes to clear security, and there I finally was on the inside looking out. I had to pinch myself. Act like you've been here before, I told myself. You know that there's this level of confidence that we all display whenever you're doing something new, you're trying something new, but deep down inside, you have butterflies. It happened with, my first story when I was licking my lips and being all scared. And on this day, the butterflies had multiplied. Inside, I quickly made my rounds, introducing myself to White House staffers who were, for the most part, packing up to move out. So it was an interesting dynamic that I faced at that time because I was coming in at the end of the Bush administration, and for the most part, people were, hey, we don't really care, we're out of here. And there was Dana Perino, White House spokesman. I tried to have a conversation with her, very nice, and there were several others. So it was really high and by, because a few weeks and a new set of communication staffers would be arriving at the White House. There was Robert Gibbs and Bill Burton, Dan Pfeiffer, Jan Psaki. Within the first couple weeks, I had my first close encounter with President Obama. I had covered him out on the campaign trail and asked him questions, but this was the first time that I would engage with the president since the election. I was in the basement office of where CNN is located at the White House. First of all, we hear about the White House and just this big, beautiful building. If you have a large walk-in closet, that's bigger than the workspace that we have. 4 people crammed into this workspace in the basement of the White House. I remember one time Tom Brokaw was at the White House and I was talking about how everyone was so jammed into this area, and he says, Dan, it's about the real estate. It's where you're working. So there I was in my basement closet when a breathless voice came over the intercom. There was a young assistant announcing that everyone should come upstairs to the briefing room. That's where we have all the daily briefings. The first thing that came to my mind is that something bad was happening. I remember when I took the job, someone said to me, do you realize that you're going to work in Washington at the White House, which is like the #1 target for all people who hate America? And so with that breathless come upstairs, I thought, we have to get out of here. So I ran upstairs and ran right into the president. He happened to be just strolling around and wanted to check out the areas where we worked. We had some light conversation. He spoke with other reporters there, but he said he was just there to chat, not to take any difficult questions. And then someone asked a really tough question. And the president said, if you keep asking those questions, I'm never coming back here. So he left, and to my knowledge, he never came back again. Many people assume that as White House correspondents, we have plenty of access to the president. In a little bit, I'll be talking more about access and transparency. I remember one time someone sent me an email asking if I could pass a message along to the president. I chuckled. Did they really think I could do that? Knock on the Oval Office door. Hey, a viewer has a message. Even though we work right down the hall from the Oval Office, dropping in is just out of the question. The door to the offices of the White House press secretary and other more junior staffers is always open, and that is where we dig for information. But you stray too far, and the Secret Service agents will stop you. At least they're supposed to. If you've been following the news lately, sometimes people get a little closer than they should. Occasionally, the president does host lunches or coffees with a small group of reporters to get a feel for what they're thinking and to offer up mostly unfiltered but off-the-record comments. These meetings can be helpful. But getting access is always a major issue for reporters who cover the president every day. No matter how much access we get, it's not enough. To outsiders and some administration officials, this is viewed as whining. And there could be a bit of that, but the facts are very clear. On numerous occasions, when there was a big controversial story like healthcare or Benghazi, or when aides wanted to keep the president on message, there was limited press access to normally open events in the Oval Office or other rooms. In other words, no video cameras or producers or anyone editorial, just still cameras allowed. Usually there would be some sort of formal protest that would be waged by the White House Correspondents Association, but decisions were rarely reversed. There were times when we had to grapple with, okay, we didn't have access to go into a meeting. The White House is giving us their picture. Should we use it? And that was a very real conversation that we would often have. Sometimes we wouldn't use the picture because we felt that if we were not inside getting a chance to find out exactly what was said, and we're just giving viewers a picture and what a report from a press release was giving us, that was not enough. Again, this was also a problem in the last Bush administration. But this problem extends beyond just getting into an event. Much of the criticism lately has been about real access to information, critical documents that could shed light on an issue. While other presidents have tried to have more control over the message, what sets this administration apart is what the president said during his campaign in 2008 and when he first became president. He talked so much about access and transparency. He set a high bar. He argued for more open government and vowed to be the most transparent administration in history. Take a listen to this clip from the president not long after he was elected, talking about what his administration is doing to further transparency.
But the way to make a government responsible is not simply to enlist the services of responsible men and women or to sign laws that ensure that they never stray. The way to make government responsible is to hold it accountable. And the way to make government accountable is to make it transparent so that the American people can know exactly what decisions are being made, how they're being made, and whether their interests are being well served. The directives I am giving my administration today on how to interpret the Freedom of Information Act will do just that. For a long time now, there's been too much secrecy in this city. The old rules said that if there was a defensible argument for not disclosing something to the American people, then it should not be disclosed. That era is now over. Starting today, every agency and department should know that this administration stands on the side not of those who seek to withhold information, but those who seek to make it known. To be sure, issues like personal privacy and national security must be treated with the care they demand. But the mere fact that you have the legal power to keep something secret does not mean you should always use it. The Freedom of Information Act is perhaps the most powerful instrument we have for making our government honest and transparent, and of holding it accountable. And I expect members of my administration not simply to live up to the letter, but also the spirit of this law. I will also hold myself, as president, to a new standard of openness. Going forward, anytime the American people want to know something that I or a former president wants to withhold, we will have to consult with the Attorney General and the White House counsel, whose business it is to ensure compliance with the rule of law. Information will not be withheld just because I say so. It will be withheld because a separate authority believes my request is well grounded in the Constitution. Let me say it as simply as I can. Transparency and the rule of law will be the touchstones of this presidency.
So you hear the president, talking about his pledge to be transparent. And then the next one back. Let's go back. Okay, there we go. Thank you. But despite what the president has said and what he has done, there's still a lot of questions being raised about whether or not the White House has done enough. In a recent interview with CNN White House Press Secretary Josh Earnest, who was a deputy spokesman when I was there and was very helpful in getting information, talked about this growing discontent about the president's transparency pledge, and he defended the president this way.
President's thinking.
Some would say that it may be more adversarial because you all are withholding more than ever. I do seen this letter this week from the Society of Professional Journalists. It's from 40 press groups, all saying that the president should be more transparent.
Well, look, I think the president's record of transparency stands up to any of the record of his predecessors.
But you did see the letter, you did hear from the groups.
I did.
Do you think they have legitimate concerns?
Well, again, they're all journalists. And if the day that they stop, the day that they sort of sit back and say, you know what, we don't need to write a letter, the White House is telling us everything that they're supposed to, is the day that they're no longer doing their jobs.
Well, they say that these, many federal agencies all across the government are imposing terrible restrictions on freedom of the press. And I wonder if there's anything you can do in your new role to stop that, to improve the flow of information.
Well, I definitely am committed, and I have a responsibility in this job to try to help the president live up to his commitment to be the most transparent president in history. And if you look at some of the steps that we've already taken.
I'm surprised you still said that line.
Yeah.
Most transparent president in
Absolutely.
history. He has been criticized so many times for saying that, given the prosecutions of whistleblowers and other steps.
Yeah.
You all still stick by that line?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That if you look at the president's record of releasing the waves records once a quarter, that's something the previous administration, they went to the Supreme Court to prevent that information from being released. This administration releases it voluntarily on the internet on a quarterly basis. Reporters for years clamored to get access to fundraisers that presidents hosted or attended that were hosted in private homes. Reporters now have access to those when this president goes to a private home. He was at a private home
this week
just on Wednesday night. Yeah. So there are a number of steps that we've taken to give people greater insight into what's happening at the White House.
So there's Josh Earnest defending the president's transparency pledge. But I wanted to read, I have the letter here that was sent from 40 different media organizations, such as the Organization of Professional Journalists and others. I'll just read a few lines. Over the past 2 decades, public agencies have increasingly prohibited staff from communicating with journalists unless they go through public affairs offices or through political appointees. This trend has been especially pronounced in the federal government. We consider these restrictions a form of censorship, an attempt to control what the public is allowed to see and hear. And again, this is a letter that was sent to the president. And it goes on to say, the stifling of free expression is happening despite your pledge on your first day in office to bring a new era of openness to federal government. Recent research has indicated the problem is getting worse throughout the nation, particularly at the federal level. It talks about reporters seeking interviews or expected to seek permission, often providing questions in advance. Delays can stretch for days longer than most deadlines allow. And in many cases, this is clearly being done, they write, to control what information journalists and the audience they serve have access to. These are pretty strong, strong words. And then they wrap up by saying, it has not always been this way. In prior years, reporters walked the halls of agencies and called staff people at will. Only in the past 2 administrations have media access controls been tightened at most agencies. And then they give examples. They talk about a journalist at Reuters who spent more than a month trying to get the Public Affairs Office of the Environmental Protection Agency to approve an interview with a scientist on climate change. So many journalists view this as a major problem, and I look back at times in my own career covering the White House and where this problem reared its ugly head. Sometimes officials could not talk to us just because they had sensitive information, and we understand that. But I remember I was at an event with a senior administration official who had given me information in the past. He was acting kind of weird. And I said, all I'm looking for is, the information. I asked him. And he said, well, I don't want to be seen in public talking to you because we've been instructed not to talk to reporters. Now, I wasn't asking him to tell me any military secrets. I was just seeking some basic information that could be helpful in my reporting. And that's how my request was met. Just last week, at a journalism convention in Chicago, editors and reporters publicly criticized the administration. The Associated Press quotes one attendee as saying, quote, "The White House push to limit access and reduce transparency has essentially served as the secrecy roadmap for all kinds of organizations." So there are the facts. A lot of journalists, a lot of organizations aren't happy with what they have been receiving from the White House. But there are plenty of defenders of the administration. And they say that some of these limits or controls are necessary to make sure that all of the information goes out in one voice, and that it is correct. And they do have a point. We saw a disconnect recently where the president was giving one message on ground troops in the fight against ISIS and a different voice coming from the Pentagon. And that can lead to a lot of confusion as to what the way forward is. So they do have a point in trying to get the entire administration to funnel all information in one voice. In a statement to the AP, White House spokesman Eric Schultz, someone I dealt with on a number of stories, said the following: "Over the past 6 years, federal agencies have gone to great efforts to make government more transparent and more accessible than ever, to provide people with information that they can use in their daily lives." And they talk about the visitors' logs, which Josh spoke about earlier. And in fact, that has been the case. I remember going through when those quarterly visitors' logs were released, you go through them, just looking for any little nugget that might jump out that would create a story. And in fact, the White House has opened up these fundraising events to the press. Not for the whole event, but at least allowed to go in and observe what's going on. There are websites like recovery.gov, which offer up more information on government spending for the public to have access to. But some feel that these actions don't go far enough in addressing what they believe is a serious problem. And their argument is that any closed or limited event just gives critics of the administration more reason to doubt the president's campaign pledge and ask the question, what are they hiding? Transparency is just one of the hot button issues that I reported on or dealt with during my time at the White House. There's immigration reform and health care, government funding, the financial crisis, and of course all the foreign policy issues from North Korea to Afghanistan to Syria, and of course Iraq, a place that I was able to visit with the vice president. By the way, if you ever Google my name and click on images and you see that shot of me with the big helmet, a lot of times people say, where was that? It was during that trip with the vice president. And so now here I am, a recovering White House correspondent. And what does that mean? Well, life is still busy for me, but I no longer read 10 newspapers a day. I've compared it, as I said in one of my classes this morning, to cramming for a final exam every single day. You have to be well informed if you're going to ask the right questions. I no longer watch every newscast on network or cables 24/7. And then, I have to click on this again. I apologize for the, do this and this. Well, I'm hitting escape, but it's not working. I want to go to the pictures, actually. I want to go past this. Okay, there we go. I no longer annoy White House press secretaries with a million questions or attend background briefings with high-level administration officials. Although, this was kind of cool. That's all. I just wanted to say that. I no longer have to race out to the White House North Lawn at the top of the hour to do live shots on an issue that I just became an expert on 5 minutes before, sometimes in the snow. This is what I call one of those just gratuitous pictures. You know how you put baby pictures on TV and that kind of thing? I love to just put this slide up there because it's a cool picture of the White House in snow. The number one question I get, followed by what's it like to fly on Air Force One, is do you miss covering the White House? And the answer is both yes and no. Yes, because of the immense daily challenge of covering world and domestic events from a seat not too far from the Oval Office. The privilege of traveling around the world on someone else's dime to report on important issues. I know there's a lot of turmoil in this country right now, and a lot of Americans are very cynical about Washington. But information is a powerful flashlight, and I've had a chance to help illuminate some of the world events that have occurred during my time there. I woke up several months ago and found out that there's this really cool world outside the Beltway. I actually took 2 weeks off, back to back, and went on an RV trip with my family. Something I hadn't done in a long time, the 2 weeks off. I'd never done the RV trip. I still follow politics and foreign affairs, but at a different pace. My White House correspondent treadmill has been replaced with a slower and less steeper one. I'm on a new path, sharing my story with students like you here, reporting on issues I care deeply about, like a recent special report on the role inner-city ministers played in fighting Boston's crime problem of the 90s. It aired on the PBS program Religion and Ethics News Weekly. And I won't, since we're running a little long here, I'm just going to show you a little clip from that. And if I can't find it, then we'll skip it. Oh, here we go. Well, actually, I think that this might have like a little commercial thing at the top. As we wait for that to wind up, I'll just recap. Essentially, this is a story. I wanted to show this because this is kind of the last. I showed you my first story of how I began, and then this is my last story, which is Boston in the 1990s late 80s, 1990s had a major crime problem. And ministers played an important role in turning that city around. Crime went from 150 murders in 1 year to dropping by 80% in 9 years. And so that's fine, we'll go, we're having a problem with it, but that's fine. But in addition to some of the things I'm doing on PBS, I'm also aware of how this industry is evolving. There are more ways to spread your message than network or cable news or terrestrial radio. News and entertainment, when you want it, is served up online and on your handheld devices. I think it's so interesting that we all invest in large flat screen TVs, but end up in bed watching House of Cards on a tablet or NBC Nightly News on an app. Websites now offer news customized to your political views or topical requirements. And that's why I'm investing in content and technology startups in an effort to catch this wave. It's light years away from the days of big video machines and the bulky resume tape that landed on the desk of the news director at WDEF. But like then, I'm in the right place at the right time, still learning and still curious. Everything along the way, from the first story on Erlanger's helicopter to daily reports from the White House, was priceless, even if I have a little less hair and more gray. Thank you for having me. I look forward to spending more time on this campus and learning from you as well.